Yes, she's recording.
Good evening, everybody. Um, I was not able to be with you on Sunday, so we'll just start right off the bat with whether there are any questions regarding what was discussed or regarding anything for that matter. Hearing none, no questions, no comments. I have been attempting to find out additional information regarding Ishmael because I understand that we needed to go into that a little bit. Um, I, I found some intriguing stuff, but what I'll do is just introduce it and trust that it resonates with you. Because that's, I guess, the true test of whether something is useful to us, the extent to which it resonates with us on a spiritual level. I did a lot of looking at locations where it said that Ishmael's sons, Ishmael settled and where his people expanded to, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But just know this: just like the tribes of Israel, and there are 10 of them are called lost tribes. Something very similar occurred with a number of Ishmael's sons too, in that they could not determine specifically where a number of them settled, and the only thing that we have are things from other writings that refer to several of his sons. And in Judges, it talks about the Midianites who were beaten by the Israelites at one point in time. So, in other words, there are other writings out there that may speak to his sons, and so we're trying to follow those down as well. I did want to go back to Ishmael himself just for a second, though, because I found something that talked about parallels between Ishmael and what happened with Ishmael and what happened with Israel, meaning Ishmael and his brother Jacob. And then I added some others that I saw. Okay. If you will remember, Ishmael's name is very meaningful in that it has Ish in it, which is, Ishmael means God hears. And if you think about Isaac, and if you think about Jacob, there really isn't anything significant about their names, except that their names describe character of the individual, meaning Jacob was, he grabbed the heel of his brother, and Isaac is laughter, because apparently his mother laughed when told that she would have a son at her age. So it describes attributes of the individual, whereas Ishmael is an attribute that describes a relationship directly between Ishmael and God, because it says God hears. So there's been virtually nothing that's said in the scriptures about Abraham's progeny through Ishmael. And again, you only find it when you look in other sources, some other sources. A few listings in the Bible, but in other sources you can find it. So Ishmael, meaning God hears, is similar to a promise, like, God hears. It's not God heard or God will hear. God hears. It's almost like a state of being. God hears. There are more than in the Bible. His name occurs a lot in the Bible. His initial homeland is Arabia, which is the Saudi Arabia area, and Ishmael is mentioned about 25 in 25 books of the Old Testament and about 5 books of the New Testament. Moses makes reference to Ishmael, David, and in the Chronicles, there's Judges, as I said, because of the Midianites are from him, and as well as Job. All of these make some kind of reference to Ishmael, and that's in the Bible itself. Now, I've not looked at the Quran, although I know that the Quran sees that Ishmael is a prophet, much like Muhammad, much like Yeshua. He's seen as a prophet as well. So there's parallelism between Israel and Ishmael. We already picked up on some of them, as you remember. There were 12 tribes of Israel, right? And then there are 12 tribes or chieftains of Ishmael. This is in Genesis 17:20 and Genesis 25:12 through 18. Both were promised a land. The Israelites were promised Canaan, and the other was promised a large nation, which we now know is in Arabia. Both Israel and Ishmael. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you with Ishmael. Ishmael and Jacob. Israel is the same as Jacob. Both claimed physical descent, if you looked at it from that perspective, from the story perspective, from Abraham. One through his first wife, Sarah, that was Isaac. One through his second wife, Hagar, and the second wife, Hagar, had the firstborn. The first wife, Sarah, had the secondborn. And if I'm getting confusing, stop me anytime and ask a question. So Ishmael was Abraham's firstborn by his second wife. Isaac was his secondborn by his first wife. And I'm trusting that through seeing some of the parallels, it'll generate questions and maybe some insights that we hadn't thought about before. Let's see, what's the next one? Both of these boys, Ishmael and Isaac, shared the rite of circumcision. Because if you remember, when Abraham was to comply with the covenant, he had to circumcise himself and all of the males in his household. And at the time, Ishmael was 13 or so, 13, I believe. And so he was circumcised at the same time his father was circumcised. Then Isaac was circumcised when he was born years later. He was circumcised on the 8th day of his birth. So both of them had shared this. Both Ishmael and Isaac shared this physical token of the covenant, if you will. Both of them use the same name for God. For instance, in Hebrew, El or Elohim, in Arabic, Allah. But they're both the same name for God, but in their respective tongues. And both of them are even the one God. They're monotheistic, believe in the one God. Both of them stand under God's protection because if you remember what God said to Hagar and what God said to Abraham, they have the same protections, and they both receive promises from God. Both of them, Isaac and Ishmael, have fathered the father of new religions. So the sacrifice of Isaac is sort of like a trial for Abraham. If you remember that, when God told him to sacrifice his son, a trial of obedience. But we've never seen it this way. And as I was looking at this, the banishment of Ishmael was a trial for Abraham and Hagar. Because God had made a promise to Hagar years ago when her son was an infant, and she left Abraham's tent because she feared she was uncomfortable with the way that her mistress was treating her, Sarah. And remember, the messenger of God told her to go back and to Abraham's tent and do what his mistress told her. And then the second time that she was sent away was after Ishmael was about 13 or 14. Must have been about 14 because he was 13 when Isaac was born. No, I'm sorry, when Isaac was conceived. And Isaac was weaned when Sarah said to Abraham, that woman's son will not inherit with my son. That woman's son will not, my words, that woman's son will not inherit with my son. And so she convinced Abraham to send her away. Now, this had to be difficult for Abraham because Ishmael had been his only son for 13 years. It had to be difficult for Abraham, I'm sure, because he had a love for Ishmael. You don't have your only son in your old age, and you have to contemplate sending him away. And so the banishment of, that's why I said the banishment of Ishmael was a trial for Abraham, but also for Hagar as well. And the trials of Abraham related to, sending his son out there. But for Hagar, she received the covenant. She'd received the promise from God years earlier. I don't know that had she not remembered it or what. But however it occurred, it was a trial for both of them. Next parallel, Ishmael and Isaac were together when they buried their father in Genesis 25:9. And in one of the Midrash readings from one of the rabbis, Abraham was said to visit Ishmael's home twice after the banishment. And on one of those occasions, he even gave Ishmael some marital advice, not directly because he did not actually see Ishmael. He came to his tent. Ishmael was not there. But the woman who was his wife was not very courteous to him and inviting. And so Abraham left a message saying something to the effect that tell Ishmael that he needs to check one of his tent pegs, something to that effect. And when she told him, Ishmael understood that it was his father and what it meant, that his wife wasn't very open to him. And the second time he came, the second wife that Ishmael had was very open, very courteous to him. And Ishmael's father, Abraham, left a message for Ishmael to the effect that this wife is very good. This wife is very nice. All right, let me stop here. We've talked about, I've just gone down a whole list of parallels. Does anybody else see any other parallels at this point? What I'm trying to do is get an overview. Go ahead, Charles.
I saw one in there when you said he had to send that son away, Ishmael and
Yes,
Isaac. He had God told him to kill his son. That there was a lot of pressure on him about killing his son and sending the other son away, because I think God was telling him he didn't want nothing that he had come between him, the Lord and him. So that was a test for him to send his son away, and the other test was kill his other son.
So both of them were a type of test, a type of seeing where Abraham's head was in terms of his relationship with God and being obedient. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyone else? Thank you, Charles.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
The circumcision is, and I know it's a circumcision physical. What's the spiritual circumcision of that?
Circumcision of the heart, which is not seen. The physical circumcision is simply a physical example of the covenant. The spiritual circumcision is the circumcision of the heart. And it reminds me of, to me, and this is just me, guys, it reminds me of the tearing of the hymen in a female, if you will, in a sense. That's hidden. That's not seen, whereas the external circumcision is seen. The circumcision of the heart is spiritual, the other is physical. Any comments regarding Charles's question? Okay. Moving along. If you remember, Genesis 17, 18 through 21 was what God promised Abraham concerning Ishmael and his heirs. Yes, someone? Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live in thy sight." Remember when Abraham said that, or when God told Abraham that he was going to be the father of many nations, and that his wife Sarah would have a child, and then Abraham exhorted the Father, his Creator, on behalf of Ishmael, saying, "Oh, if you would only look at Ishmael, and that he might live in your sight." That, and then God reminded him that Sarah was going to bear his son and call his name Laughter, Isaac. and that he would establish his covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. But he says, as for Ishmael, I have heard you. Remember, Ishmael's name originally was God hears. God hears because back in the wilderness, when Hagar went in the wilderness the first time, that's when God told Hagar, you will bear a son and you will call his name God hears, Ishmael. Second time she went in the wilderness when she was running away from Sarah after Ishmael, I'm sorry, she wasn't running away. She was banished. She was sent away by Abraham, and she distanced herself from her son because she said she didn't want to see him die. And so she lifted up her voice, and then the child also cried. And here you go again. God hears. I mean, his name was more than just an attribute of the child. It was an attribute of a much broader need and cry on a macro level. God hears. And even today, you know, what do we say? We cry out, God hears. We cry out so that we can go around being very quiet, but it's only when we have this yearning and this crying out to God. And I'm not saying that necessarily has to be audible by the external ear all the time. But anyway, Pastor, you were going to interject something?
No, I was actually thinking about how Abraham made it a point to cry out to God for Ishmael's protection. And when he was asked to sacrifice Isaac, he did not make that cry. He simply proceeded to follow those instructions. I think that was, I thought that was interesting, as well as the idea that the first time that Hagar left was when Sarah was mistreating her. I thought that was interesting because if we're looking at this in regards to this feminine aspect of Abraham being an internal battle out of this nation, this seed that the Creator brought into being, this concept of Abraham, this friend of God, this seed who was going to bring forth nations. Inside of that seed, it appears that there was an aspect of birthing that we maybe have or have not looked at, because if there's a battle between the two, then is Sarah making an effort to exert authority over Hagar in order to get rid of her? What do I mean by that? If these are concepts, then is one concept being chosen over the other, or is it in conflict with the other? Because if we look at Sarah, what we see is from her womb, and by way of extension, came Isaac, Jacob, and Esau. And from Hagar, by extension, came Ishmael. So was this selfishness on Sarah's part that extended to those who were from her womb by extension?
I see.
As opposed to what it was with Ishmael. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, and additionally, as you were talking, the thing that flashed to my mind was, what if Sarah had never been selfish and treated her Hagar with arrogance. What if she'd never done that? What if there had been balance in the relationship originally, and Ishmael grew up with Isaac in a family unit of Abraham, Hagar, and Sarah, without the difficulty between the women, the ladies. Because if you'll remember, when Hagar got pregnant, it is said that, she treated her mistress not well, because now she was pregnant, her mistress was still barren. So now, when Sarah's pregnant and she sees Hagar's son with her son, whatever he was doing, she got upset with it. What if they had worked it out, both terms? And so what this shows, go ahead. I'm just talking. Go ahead, Ron.
See, in chapter 16 in Genesis, in verse 4, I think it is Hagar who causes the discomfort. At least that's what I read into this. Verse 4 says, and he went in to Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her sight. So I'm thinking, I agree with you. What if that had been different? But something happened here when Hagar saw. She thought this gave her. When she conceived, she thought this gave her some kind of an advantage, maybe. And I think this is where the conflict starts.
And this just, as I read these stories now, it just reminds me that the end is in the beginning. And if we knew what the end was in the beginning, would we do what we do the way we do it? Would we say what we say the way we say it? Would we think the way we've been thinking in the past, the way we think? So it's a glaring mirror for us to always be mindful of what we think, what we say, what we do. There are a couple of other things I wanted to say about Ishmael and Isaac as it relates to the banishment and the you were going to say something before I get there?
You and Pastor were talking about chapter 17, and I looked up verse 18, and Abraham said to God, "Oh, that Ishmael may live before thee," but God said no. And live there means live. I was wondering why does God say no? So emphatically, I guess.
What's the interpretation of the live? Has somebody looked that up? Because I didn't look it up.
It says just to have life, and so it doesn't shed any light on it to me, because I thought it would mean something else, or maybe I got to probe deeper on it. But I'm wondering, because the blessing here that God offers in verse 20 to Ishmael, he tells him, "I will bless him, and I will make him fruitful and multiply him." So what is the difference between that and the covenant? Because he says, "My covenant will be with Isaac." So this blessing does not sound like anything less than what is the what makes the covenant?
Okay, if we'll have to go back and find that covenant, because a lot of what was in the original covenant is in the blessing of Ishmael.
Exactly. Exactly. So
let me go back. And
maybe because I don't know where it is. I looked for it. I guess it would it be in the start of chapter 12.
Oh, that's when when he got told to leave his country, and he said, "I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing, and those who curse you will be cursed, and those who bless you will be blessed, and all the families of the earth in you will be blessed." That was the initial promise to him, but the facets of that blessing are some of the same ones that Ishmael has. The other difference is that in the child that was the inheritor, then that's the child who got the what did we talk about last time? We called it the birthright, I think. And who was said to be the leader of the people subsequently, which is a little different than the original covenant with Ishmael, and he didn't say that with Ishmael. He said Ishmael would be a leader of, but not the leader of the people that God chose through Abraham to covenant with.
Okay, so the difference is the covenant. Both of them receive a blessing, almost that sounds the same anywhere or similar, but the covenant includes the birthright, which is a tremendous responsibility, and as we discussed that, it makes it almost priest-like. So it's almost a covering kind of thing. Is that what you're seeing here? So Isaac would be a covering for
the great responsibility in the birthright.
Yeah, and okay, over
which is what Rebecca. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm like you. I was just kind of thinking out loud. Go ahead.
Which is what Rebecca saw in Jacob and Esau. I'm sorry, Rachel saw in Jacob and Esau the potential in terms of spiritual enlightenment in Jacob that she saw versus Esau, who was a man of the hunter, a man of the earth, that kind of thing, because she knew that in terms of the birthright would provide the covering for the people, the spiritual covering for the people, in a sense.
So if we look at this and see that Isaac and Ishmael were brothers, and both of them were slated to be leaders of nations. If we look at that, then the question becomes, what nations came from them? And if we look at nations in relationship to the spiritual, then the question becomes, what spiritual nations came from the seed of Isaac and the seed of Ishmael? And we know that we have been told that the only spiritual nation that came from Ishmael was Islam. And the spiritual nation that came from Isaac, vis-a-vis of Jacob, would be Christianity, Judaism. And, so...
And even if you go from Isaac directly, Yeah.
So if that is the case, then I have great questions about those concepts. Why? Because if if Islam came from Ishmael and Christianity and Judaism came from Isaac, then what we see today is that they are the major forces, yet all three of them are filled with rituals, as opposed to spiritual. Now,
yes, and we're gonna get to that a little bit too.
Oh, okay, all right.
Go ahead, Pastor.
No, so I don't want to get too far ahead of you, but what I'm seeing is that the extent of those who came from Isaac, that I keep seeing a religion that is steeped in rituals and materialism, a religion that finds its balance, or what it calls its balance rather, in the amount of clout that it has in the material world. When I look at Ishmael, on the other hand, I see that the spiritual gift that came from the one who God is hearing, ends up doing something with the spirituality that he has. I see Ishmael falling into the material world along with the rest of Isaac's offspring. Now,
right.
When I look at what came from Hagar, Keturah's womb, I see something totally different than what came from the womb originally, of course, of Sarah. I see total spirituality coming from Keturah/Hagar's womb as the second wife. I see a mixture, a conflation of religion and materialism that came from the womb of Sarah and that came from the first seed of Abraham, then Ishmael. So I guess what I'm seeing is that if I can make it clearer by saying, if we can imagine a line drawn, and on one side of that line are the children that came from Abraham through Keturah/Hagar, and the ones who came prior to that. What we see is on one side of the line we see materialism and religion. On the other side we see spirituality. Does that make sense? And the reason I'm seeing this is because I remember when Moses was there in the wilderness, at the period when the drawing out takes place, what happens? It is the offspring of Keturah who has the vision to see what is to be drawn out and to see how to navigate the chaotic wilderness that they are in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
But I see that from Jacob's son.
I see what you're saying too, Pastor. Let me see if I agree with you. See if I'm saying the same thing rather than not agree with you. I do agree with you. This appears to be an either-or kind of thing now at the part where we're looking at it. And if it's working in conjunction with each other, if you look at it from a spiritual perspective, there is two wombs, and the two wombs represent the mind or the quest of man, and he is to be one or the other, but there is also the opportunity to be both, meaning that you may start off materialistic, you may start off physical until you understand that you are human, and the God hearing part is when you cry out for more and you become the Ishmael. You move from being Isaac to being Ishmael. Can that be it? Is that kind of what you're saying? That the two work in conjunction together?
Conceptually, I can see that, yes. And that's why it's difficult, because we keep seeing them as people as opposed to concepts.
Concepts, yeah.
And when I look at what happened, I see that Moses ended up with a Midianite wife, right?
Correct.
And Midian was a descendant of Keturah. The Midianites were Ishmael. And
yes,
at that point, there is a crossing, there is a mixture, rather, of the two bloodlines. Moses comes from the bloodline of Jacob, right?
Okay.
And Midian comes from the same bloodline that what you call him? Ishmael.
Yeah, Moses was from the Levites.
Right, Moses from the Levites, and his wife comes from the bloodline of Keturah.
Yeah, from from Midian, from her son Midian.
Right. So at that point, there is a mixture of the bloodline, the lineage, and the lineage to me speaks to the evolution of the growth of the expansion of the understanding of the concept as it grows, as it gets to a different place of understanding. So I see a merging of those. And what did Moses say? If Moses came from the Levites, and that is the priestly tribe, what did Moses say to Midian, the priest of Midian, the father-in-law? What did he say? He said he wanted him to lead them through the wilderness because he had insight. In other words, your eye is open, ours is not. You could help us through this chaos. So that spirituality is not coming from Moses. It's coming from Keturah's, the descendant of Keturah. You see where I'm coming from?
So that seed, which was supposed to be the spiritual seed, per the covenant that God made with Abraham, that seed leans so much to materialistic kinds of things that it got lost in that, in a sense. And the other one, God hears, which is Ishmael, the balance has to come when they both merge. And God actually hears not only the Arabs, but the Israelites have to understand that they need to cry out as well. That's that seed. Because, as you said, Midian was a wise man. The priest of Midian, not Midian, but the priest of Midian was a wise man, insightful. Ron, I'm sorry I cut you off.
Oh, no, that's fine. And he was the one who taught Moses how to lead without killing himself, in terms of, appointing people to judge other people in the wilderness. In other words, he taught Moses spiritual attributes. So what I'm saying is that it appears to me that when we get deeper into this, what we are beginning to see is that the very thing that the priest of Midian did in terms of spirituality is the same thing that Jesus came to do, to rightly interpret the law and to free humanity from rituals.
And look at what happened. Look even the genealogy through which Jesus came. You're talking about Rahab and you're talking about, the Moabites through Lot's oldest daughter. And so, you already have you have the mixing here, and it continues all the way down as if to say, guys, Ishmael, you went this way, and Isaac, you went this way. But in order for us to be balanced, we can't each carry all of the negative attributes that we have on either side. We need to blend them so that we have the hello.
Make sure your phone.
We have to blend them so that.
Please check the phone and see if it's muted. Thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
That we have to blend them so that the spirit, the true essence of the spiritual seed can continue. And until we do that, the true essence of the spiritual seed will not be one entity. And that's why the wars are going to continue on both sides and I think that there is opportunity for the descendants of Isaac as well as the descendants of the Ishmaelites, of Ishmael, to remember that God hears, the attribute that God hears.
So with the blending, that means that God hears all of them.
Exactly.
Now, having said that, that means that God hears all of them because everything is blended. Could this be telling us today that the greatest error that we have ever made was to buy into the lie that there is a difference in the journey to truth by virtue of buying into the individual religious sects like Islam and Judaism, etc., rather than looking at the commonality there. And the common thread there is God hears, but not only that, we are able to be one with the Creator and hear the Creator as the Creator hears us without having to go through the rituals that Islam goes through, that Judaism goes through, that Christianity goes through, that Hinduism goes, etc., and on and on and on. So was the blending of the seed for that purpose? Because right now, where are we? We are in chaos, not only because of material greed, but we are also in a state of chaos. We are back in the wilderness because of the conflict that's based upon religious etiquette that do not fit the Scripture or the Quran. They are foreign to both. So could we be at this place looking for balance and at a juncture where the balance is to be found when in the truth thread that runs through all of these systems of belief, as opposed to seeking balance between humanity and the governmental forces. I think what I'm trying to say is this: our desire to find balance, must it also include the desire to purge spirituality of all of the religious aspects that has been wrapped up in it, like the rituals of baptism, the ritual of communion, the ritual of the Holy Prayer Day of Fridays for the Muslims, the religion, the aspects of Rosh Hashanah for Judaism. All of these rituals must be purged in order for us to be one as was Jesus, as was Muhammad. because the rituals that are engaged in now are not the rituals that they perpetuated. Does that make sense?
So are you talking about the rituals have become religious dogma? We've majored on it so much in each one of those respective quote unquote religions that we've lost track of the truth of how we are one underneath all of that.
Yeah.
If I'm a Muslim, I got to pray 7 times. Say 7 times a day. Blah, blah, blah. I have to make sure I do all of that. Well, what does that say about do I love my fellow human being? Or if I'm a Catholic, I got to go in. I have to, when I sin, I have to say so many blah 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 blah. What's that say? I'm so busy keeping the holidays and keeping the adhering to this and that. It's what I hear you saying. I'm so busy doing that it's like the Pharisees and Sadducees. They were so busy thinking about the law and setting laws and making sure people follow the laws, and they forgot the essence of what they were supposed to be doing. That's obedience to the Most High.
So we are in a position, or we are placed in a space where the responsibility has become the understanding of the blending aspects of these concepts that grew from that seed of Abraham, how they are intertwined and they are inseparable. And because they are inseparable, it means that every one of them has those blemishes that needs to be purged from them. And then once that purging takes place, what's left is the truth. And that truth of the common thread is simply that we are Elohim having a physical experience in these bodies. And the reason I say that is because every one of those religions rails against exactly what I just said. Even though we created in the image and likeness, even that we are Elohim because we are that likeness, whether it be Islam, Judaism, Christianity, etc. It says that we cannot be God. We can't be Elohim. So are we in purging? What we have been focused on so far is looking at the religions that we have been party to, that we have been engaged in, and for the most part, that's Christianity. That's our greatest exposure. And some of us have been exposed in a limited way to Islam and Judaism, but our major exposure is Christianity. So the question becomes, if we purge Christianity, then will that result in the purging of everything else because of the violent domination that Christianity has posed to the world and every other religion? Does that make sense?
If our intent and desire is that in purging Christianity, this will serve as the seed in the macro for purging of others is another way that I would say that. With our desire and intent being, because we purge Christianity, our desire and intent is that is simply a microcosm of the macro that needs to occur in every single religion, is in a sense. I think, that resonates with me.
So then, we are actually purging the seed of Abraham?
Well, as you were talking, I was thinking that, we've been talking about one seed two wives. I mean, one seed, two vessels, right? But even when Jacob married Rebekah, it was the seed. I mean, it was two children in Rebekah's womb, both of them from the seed of the father and one womb, which showed us that we hadn't gotten it right yet. It seems to have even gone astray even more. Because when I look at, and I guess these parallels is what got me excited with Ishmael and Isaac, same seed, just two different wombs to nourish. And part of what I saw is that Ishmael was sent away, Isaac was to be sacrificed. Both of the sons could potentially experience a near-death experience. Ishmael in his way, in terms of thirst and dying of thirst. Isaac, in terms of potentially being sacrificed. The angel of God intervenes on behalf of both of them in its own way. With Ishmael, it showed his mother the well of waters. With Isaac, the ram in the bush, if you will, which served as a sacrifice in place of Isaac. Ishmael's mother was Egyptian. Now, Ishmael's mother found an Egyptian wife for her son Ishmael. Isaac, on the other hand, his father sent back to his homeland for a wife for Isaac. I guess with his brother, I think Nahor's daughter Milcah had children, and Bethuel was one of the grandsons, and he had Rebekah. It's like it's just showing us all these machinations for, these are two examples again of our divergent thoughts. When the essence of our thoughts need to be unified. So.
I'm sorry.
No, go.
So the bottom line is this, if I'm right. The bottom line is this: the common denominator between Ishmael and Isaac, between the sons of Ishmael and Jacob, between the sons that came from Keturah's womb, the common thread is this: Jesus bore the blood of Ishmael and Isaac. That Jesus was descendant of both of them. And the reason we have such trouble with spirituality is because we are using racist techniques to divide the commonality of spirituality. And the commonality of spirituality is found in the reality that Jesus is a descendant of Isaac as well as Ishmael. And if that is not true, then the Bible cannot possibly be true, because there was a mixture of the children, the family of Ishmael, his lineage, as well as the lineage of Isaac. And out of those lineages came Jesus. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Are there any questions about?
So then, the purging that you were describing earlier is a mixture of both. It's not one over the other. It's the transformation is one being. God, I don't know how to say this.
One being confused.
It is no different than the transformation that goes on in Ronald Johnson is an internal thing that no one witnesses except for my external actions. But there's a transformation going on, and the transformation is, some of it deals with purging, some of it deals with submission. The same goes on in Barbara Simmons and in James Richard and everybody else on this phone and everybody else searching for truth. So those transformations, those submissions represent Isaac and Ishmael. And
I'm sorry.
I'm trying to talk it out. I don't see where one dominates the other. I think one says to you that you have the birthright, meaning when you get this right, you become the covering for the earth. You become the covering for mankind. You become Elohim in the land. So the other one says, this is the internal part of you that deals with, that speaks to the Creator, that is one with the Creator. God hears you. This is the part of you that recognizes you are the God that you are hearing. So one is no more powerful than the other. They have to work together. The submissions and the purgings have to be from both of them, as Barbara pointed out, the things she pointed out, the parallels of their lives, and even to the point where their names, I think God names Isaac and Abraham names Ishmael. So, I mean, it's the same but different in each one of them. And I think you're on to something. I'm just trying to see it. I guess I see it from my perspective. But if I'm wrong, tell me.
You said God named Isaac and Abraham named Ishmael. You had it. God named Ishmael. He told Hagar to call him Ishmael.
Okay. So God named both of them. Did I have it backwards, or did God name both of them? Because I think Abraham didn't want to call him Lapid. Okay.
So when Jesus said,
"Oh, wait a minute. There's a point here, Ron. Okay. I think it was God who told Sarah that his name would be Isaac, and then later Abraham named him Isaac. But it was God who, the messenger of God, who spoke directly to Hagar. I said, "This is God hears."
That was my other point that I forgot. It has never been done in history to recognize and give the recognition, if you would lack of a better term, of the spiritual energy here. Hagar and Sarah play a tremendous role in this, as does Rebecca. And I really think they represent the spiritual essence of what this discovery is all about. So you're right. He did say it to Sarah. And I still think that there's still something there that I don't see yet with Hagar and Sarah. They seem to be totally different, and that is what we've always seen. But I don't quite see the parallel there. I mean the thing that brings them together. I don't see that part yet.
Okay, well let's look at it this way, Ron. Let's look at it this way.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's take out the fact that Hagar is the one who, quote unquote, started it all by being trying to be arrogant and snobbish toward her mistress when she found out she was pregnant. Let's take that out of the picture, and let's take out the fact that Sarah did not want to share her son's inheritance with Hagar's son. Let's take both of those out of the picture.
Okay.
Now let's look at these two women and look at what remains. Sarah was a spiritual woman. It said that, the light of the Shekinah, the cloud, was at her tent. Hagar was, I think, a spiritual woman because she grew up in that environment with Abraham and Sarah. And she was obedient to what she heard from God when she went that first time. Sarah was obedient too, but it's after she chuckled. I think that Hagar was very spiritual because she deferred to Abraham as her covering in a sense. She did what he asked her to do. She did what God asked her to do. Sarah, on the other hand, says, "This woman that you got pregnant is trying to be obstinate and trying to blah 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 blah. Judge between her and me." I mean, Sarah was the one who backed Abraham into a corner. And that's when he first told her, "Well, woman, that's your handmaid. Do with her what you want to do." And that's when Sarah originally sent her away for the first time. So, I mean, they both have their fallacies. They both have their fallacies. But I believe that they both were spiritual in their own way to some extent too.
And that's the battle we have every day.
Yeah.
That's the battle
I'm sorry, Pastor. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
We wage in us every day. Are we going to be angry because things are not going our way? Are we going to make every effort to change the path we're on because we don't see things as we thought we would or as soon as we thought we would? These are the battles that's raged every day. And I'm saying that if we follow this from Abraham conceptually, what we will find is that there were periods when there was complete obedience, and there were periods when there was partial obedience. There were periods when there was no obedience at all. Is that not where we are? So,
yes,
I believe that because of what we are being shown in this in Abraham's seed and the subsequent lineage after that, I believe we're being shown this so we can see a clearer picture of what this is, not only what this is all about, but who we are as Elohim. The mess came into existence when men began to label different aspects of spirituality and making them a religion unto themselves. So, when Jesus came, Jesus did not establish a religion. The Catholics established that religion. Jesus did not establish Judaism. Europeans established Judaism. Muhammad did not establish Islam. The word Islam speaks simply speaks about those who believe or something of that nature. It did not become a label until after Muhammad. So these labels are the problem. And if we remove the labels, then the question becomes, what do we have left? If we remove the labels of Islam, Christianity, Judaism, what do we have left that differentiates us? What we have left that differentiates us are rituals. The rituals of Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, if we strip the rituals away, if we take all the rituals away, what do we have left? If we take the rituals away, what we have left is creators crying out to its creation, saying, "You are as I am, and you are in human form. You were not created to conform to an animalistic nature. Your labels and your rituals are what sets you on the pathway of becoming animalistic in your thoughts. The very thing that has kept you on this pathway of being animalistic are your rituals. You are different because of your rituals, and you have labeled yourself differently. Now it is time to strip yourself of all of these labels, of all of these rituals, and see the truth for what it really is. The truth is, when you cry out to find out who you are, what you see in return is you in a mirror reflecting loving kindness. You in a mirror recognizing that the greatest thing that you can ever create is an understanding as to who you are for the benefit of humanity, being able to create that same understanding for itself. Right now, we are on the precipice of ripping these labels off as a Band-Aid on a wound and allowing the healing to take place. But that cannot happen as long as we engage in rituals. So the desire that I have is that this pandemic will show people that rituals are not necessary. There was no communion, there was no baptism, there was no congregating in the mosque or in the synagogue. All of these ritualistic gatherings has no power, and they've been shown that. The reason Christians and Jews congregate is because of rituals. The reason Muslims do it, same reason. And if we read the story of Muhammad and see where there was a federation between Islam and Christianity, or Catholicism, I should say, in order to end the wars between the two, we will see that there are Catholic rituals that mimic the same rituals as Islam. So out of all that we have seen, am I saying that the concept that we have been shown are not concept of duality, but a concept of singularity that appears to be duality? The only duality that exists in relationship to the scriptural concept of singularity is the duality that we place on them by our inhibition to embrace them or by our lack of desire to understand them. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
And
go ahead.
go ahead, Pastor. I'm sorry. I thought you were done.
The word Mary means what? Pain, doesn't it?
Yeah. And bitterness.
Pain and bitterness. So out of bitterness came Jesus. What bitterness? Out of the womb of bitterness. What is that bitterness? The bitterness that exists to this day between those who see themselves as being different because of religious beliefs that are promulgated by men and not the scriptures. So if we are to be as Jesus is, we must also come out of the womb of this bitterness, this conflict, as one who is the epitome, the essence of reconciliation for humanity. Okay, Ron.
I heard something when you were going through that, and if I'm wrong, tell me. What I heard was, you can't get this wrong if you're searching for truth. There will be some of you who start off looking for truth who have not been shrouded in religion and all the rituals and all the dogmatic stuff we talked about. But even if you are, even if you've gone through Catholicism or any of those other isms, the route leads you to the same place, truth, as long as you're searching for it. So you look at Isaac, and it shows you all the religious stuff, all the stops that you're going to make. But if you continue, and if you are willing to continue your path that you're going to have to make to get religion out of your way, it's a harder journey, but you still lead to the same place. So I guess what I just saw when you were saying that is, anybody, regardless of what place they start from or what path, there is no excuse not to find truth, because in all of it, you reach the place where God hears you.
Does
that make sense?
That's exactly it. If you think about this, whether it be Islam, Judaism, Christianity, or whatever we're familiar with, it never changes. What does that mean? There is never any growth there. There's no understanding there. The same thing that was being said and done in these religions 1,000 years ago are the same things that's happening right now. Am I right?
Yes.
They're the same things that happen. So what does that mean? There is no understanding. And if there is no understanding and no desire to understand, and the scriptures are being treated like a manual for a business, then that in itself is not a search for truth. That is, those who are the leaders in these cults are the ones who have determined what truth is. And as a result of that, since they did not arrive at the same place that they determined truth is, they label themselves. But when you follow the scriptures and see what truth is, there are no labels. There are just Elohim having a physical experience as human. That's it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
The labels are what put boxes around things. And when you put a box around this, it says it's either this or it's that. That just accentuates the duality.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because if we are to have unicity, then that unicity is devoid of duality. That is an inextricable oneness with the Creator, and that simply means that we are so intertwined in our desires until we are inseparable. And even an error in our ways because of our environment does not separate us, neither does it remove the favor of our Creator from us. It simply teaches us how to take the next step and help someone else do it without making the same mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So a righteous man who cannot make a mistake, a righteous man can only learn. And the learning does not look like what we think it looks like. The difficulty is that this is not an exercise in academia. This is a journey for truth. And the difference is there are revelations of things that we have seen, and we have been able to see them in the Scriptures, even though they are not written there the way that they have been shown to us. We know that they are true because in some ways it is inexplicable to me, the Scripture shows us that they are true. We are in a place of our own determining. If we determine that we are at a crossroads of confusion and unclear as to which way to go, that's where we are. If we determine that we journey without labors, we journey without rituals, but we condemn no one who follows those things, we search for truth for them. If we determine that we are not at a crossroads, if we determine that we are one with our Creator, and because of that, we are bringing an end to everything that is an adversary to who we have been created to be and to the principles that we stand for. We bring all of that to an end. And the reason we are able to make these determinations is because we were told in no uncertain terms that the consciousness of this environment of earth shall be dominated by those who are Elohim, who are aware of that, those who will rule as Elohim, Israel. Why? Because God hears Ishmael. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
So what have we done? We have raised Ishmael from the dead. We have opened the ears of humanity. Why? Because until now, to relegate Ishmael to a backseat of non-existence is to relegate hearing God to the same place.
Yeah.
We have to hear. And when we hear, yes, You were crippled, but you were called Israel, those who will rule. Now it's time to do that, because now Ishmael lives. No different than the blood of Abel crying out from the ground. No different from the consciousness. The life that Abel saw is crying from the consciousness of this earth. That we are that consciousness now. We must live like it. Jesus is not coming back in the form that we have been told he is. And the he's not is because what the message never left. We have grown deaf to the sound of it. But by resurrecting Israel, what is the Creator saying? Even though it is a voice of feminine energy crying out for the birth and the safety of her children, our Creator says he hears the boy's voice. He hears our voice. And the children that the womb is crying out for are the children who are so caught up in themselves until they can get along with no one, and they are greedy for everything and will do anything to get what they want. Now that we hear, the journey will be different. The insight will be different. It's not that we were not hearing in the past. It's that we were being prepared to hear as Ishmael heard. And without the foundation that has been laid all of these years, we would not have been prepared to hear and receive, accept, and embrace the true reality that Jesus is a descendant of Isaac and Ishmael. Any questions? Barbara, I'm done.
I think that's a good place to go ahead, Charles.
Now, when Ron was talking about the covenant and the blessing, the one is in the covenant. I could be wrong. That come out of Isaac is king and queen, and the one is from the blessing. They comes out princess and prince. So they still both is together.
Let me tell you, Charles, in response to what you're saying. Because Jesus was a descendant of both, we are inheritors of the covenant and the blessing.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. As we said before, we were looking at this from another lesson. Those two things cannot be separated. They're spiritual.
Right.
So, yeah, we are both. And I hope, Charles, and anybody else for that matter, that some of the earlier discussion was not confusion. We were trying to talk things out and kind of understand some things. So I hope it all makes sense now. It does to me, because for a minute there I was didn't see it, but I do now. I think this has been a beautiful lesson. Does it make sense though, in everybody? I hope.
Yeah, it made sense to me.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, it did.
Okay.
I think it was just it just broadened things even more to let us know that it's easy for us to say that we are one, but in spite of all of our own fallacies and those of anybody else, wherever they are, whoever they are, wherever they live, whatever their culture, whatever nation, that the essence is oneness in all of us. There's no one any better than the other. And what makes us the same is that unicity. So it just broadens things even more, I think, for us in terms of understanding unicity. One and many. Yeah. Elohim, one and many.
Barbara.
Yes, sir.
May I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
The simplest way to show anyone who cares to know that Jesus is a descendant of both Ishmael and Isaac, it would have to be true if there were no intermarriage after that. Why? Because Ishmael and Isaac came from Abraham's seed, which means that if Jesus came from that seed, he's automatically in the lineage of both.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been in front of our face for these years, and I just saw it. I'm sorry, Barbara, I didn't mean to step on you.
No. Well, is there anything else tonight? I'd like to finish off by talking a little bit about, not tonight, about Ishmael and his people, its people, the attributes of Ishmael, and where they are, and how the blessings came to fruition, much like we talked about the Israel, and how they got to the whatever the proverbial promised land is from a spiritual perspective. But we talked about where they were physically in terms of the story. I'd like to talk about the story and how the promises from the Creator played out for Ishmael. Pastor, I won't be able to do it on Saturday. I won't be in South Carolina on Saturday, so it would have to be after that.
That's fine. That is fine.
Okay.
Ron is ready for Saturday anyway, right, Ron?
Okay, great.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
oh, some static in the line, sir? He didn't hear us, Pastor.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's fine. We'll look forward to that.
Okay. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for allowing us to just see this and talk it through, and to hear God as God hears us. So
thank you.
Have a great night.
This was. Thank you. Yeah.
Have a good evening, you all.
You as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Pastor.